All right, guys, we are off to another start today. It is super, super hot out here in SoCal. I hope you guys are staying cool wherever you guys are tuning in from. Again, as I always remind you guys, please make sure you subscribe and like, and also share the show to help us grow. We try to keep it organic here, so no special sponsors, no play to pay here. But it's always good to have good support from you guys. So I appreciate all those who have subscribed. Today, we have a special guest. We have Teddy Bang on here from SoCal. He's going to share a little bit about his story and a little bit about Cali Flwr Farms. Welcome, Teddy.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to be here. And it's great to hear no pay to play. I've been poking around with podcasts and everybody wants money. Every time you see somebody, I didn't realize that's how it was. So hearing you say that, and just by you having me on with not asking for money, making it real easy, I appreciate that. So, yeah, respect.
Yeah, I know how it is coming from, my own background, and I know what it's like to start. But for me, it's always about, giving back to our community. And I think this is the best way I can do it. And so hopefully I'm an asset and not a liability in the space, and bringing people on that share their story, their love for the plant. I personally love it myself. It's been part of my life for a really long time. Been a black sheep for it. So, I'm all up for it now. Let's dive into a little bit about who you are and kind of like where you started to kind of build out Cali Flwr. I always like to start with kind of who you are, then dive into what you built. So tell us a little bit about Teddy.
About Teddy, well, cannabis goes deep. First time I came across it, I was 14. Babysitting, the neighborhood kind of troublemaker knew I was in a house alone, knocked on the door with hash. He was on roller skates, and he came up and said, "You want to smoke this?" Never smoked, obviously coughed and got just crazy high. Didn't like it. Then maybe a year or two later, I had a really good experience with weed. That was hash. This was with cannabis, and I was like, "This is good. It works." And pretty much smoked it. I wasn't a black sheep because I didn't tell anybody. I hid it, so I was an invisible black sheep. But then as I got older, I did start, coming clean with it. And as soon as California started talking about it going legal, and I was in that medical space, and I've seen the pharmaceutical industry, the pharmaceutical based way of treating diseases, and it just wasn't obviously working for me. I didn't see a lot of successes, and I thought there might even be a lot of problems it's actually creating itself. So when the idea of cannabis going legal and people started talking medicinal, I was like, this is it. I'm gonna stop the black sheep and or the invisible black sheep, and I'm gonna come forward with my love of cannabis and get into the legal space.
That's awesome. And thank you for kind of diving into it. It's a perfect segue. I was going to ask kind of what babysitting age that was, because you said roller skates, neighbor came by. I'm guessing you're probably the same age, 80s, 90s kid.
Yep, a
Um,
little older, but yeah, I was 14,
okay.
and yeah, it was like late 70s, early 80s. Yep.
Nice. Okay. And then from there, you just obviously probably fell in love with it. Were you into alcohol? Because I know for me growing up, I smoked weed probably by the time I was 16 on a regular base. I personally did not like it when I first tried it. By the time I was 16, I probably tried it around 14. By the time I was 16, closer to my senior year, I personally enjoyed it. That's when I got introduced to the glass bongs. So I was getting it in a different form than the fucking Coke can.
Mm-hmm.
And probably getting my hands on better weed, but never got into alcohol. And I think it's because of weed. I just want to kind of ask you your background with your relationship with it, and then kind of maybe we can dive into what got you to med school from there.
Yeah. Well, so it's similar story. In high school and after high school, I definitely drank alcohol, everything, and tried it, but never liked it. I didn't like the way I felt, and I certainly didn't like the memory lapse where you weren't quite sure the next day, and then obviously the hangover. So to me, I was like, God, weed is so much better. But the era I come from, it was classified as PCP and heroin. So a lot of the parents, a lot of people treated it like that. So I wasn't open about it, but I was able to myself say, hey, this is a much better approach to taking care of yourself than even touching alcohol or any other kind of drug like that. So It was a non-gateway drug for me. It made me close all the other gates and just say, no, weed works. I like it. And I didn't know it when I was younger. Now looking back, it had a lot of medicinal impacts on me, just from like my mind. And, I couldn't imagine today if I look back as myself as a kid, and I was definitely autistic. I had a lot of ADD, a lot of traits that nobody diagnosed back then. I had
Yeah.
tics, I had stutters, all kinds of things. Weed was the at the time I didn't realize it, but it was the medicine that helped me mitigate a lot of that and understand it. So yeah, it definitely had a good impact. It just said, nah, alcohol isn't my thing. Didn't see an upside to it with alcohol. Mhm.
Yeah, definitely in the same for me. And it's funny that you say that you felt or you feel that most likely you would have been diagnosed with autism. My son is autistic, and I
Mhm.
always harp right now in today's world that it wasn't something that they tested for back then. Especially growing up as my parents raised us. So I think it's interesting that you're identifying some of the characteristics that they kind of now say are in adults, or that you would identify as somebody who has autism or is on some sort of spectrum, and
Mhm.
how cannabis helps, because I think there's so many people now that are fighting for so much research to be done so that on a pediatric level, we are able to give this plant medicine to these children. Because right now, as a mom, I'm deathly afraid to give him a gummy, even though I'm in the industry and I've been told many times, just give him a gummy, see how much it changes him. But then I know people who have dealt with CPS and have, a lot of information and background on the law of things. And because you said it's not federally legal, it's something that they would not highly suggest at this time. And so much fight for me as a mom when it comes to this plant. And, my son oddly is nonverbal. And so I feel like definitely feeling my purpose as far as what I'm here for, and loving this plant and having so much of a respect and relationship for it, even though, like you said, it was taboo and it wasn't something that you really want to talk about until it became actually legally for adult use. And then California kind of started, the shops started popping everywhere. So
Mhm.
um I appreciate you kind of sharing that. To that point, what got you into medical school? I mean, I'm sure you could have gone many different routes, but obviously, I feel like you maybe had a love for some natural medicine other than alcohol and maybe even opioids.
Mhm.
What got you to med school? And where
Mhm.
did you go to med school?
I went to med school in Grenada down in the Caribbean,
Hmm.
and yeah, surfed, had a great lifestyle, loved everything about it, and had a real. I was living in Hawaii prior to going, so it was a really nice transition. It was hard to leave Hawaii at the time, but the transition back to the mainland after that was, I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I could be in a hospital all day long like this. It was challenging, but what got me into it was I don't know that I was inspired like personally to go to med school. It was just a lot of influences growing up in the era that I
Mm.
grew up was, doctors and medicine, and it's powerful and there's good money and you'll have a lot of control. And I thought that that would be a good way to live the life I wanted to live, which was, have kids and have a house and be safe. Um, but when I started getting into the nuts and bolts of it, and people would, mentors or counselors would talk to me about it, and they would say, be careful. Do your parents practice medicine? Do you know what you're getting into? And, or is it just based off of movies and TVs? Because that would be dangerous. And at the time, I'd say, no, no, definitely not TVs and movies, but it was. That's all I really knew about medicine. So I think there were some signs early on that I don't know if my heart is in this completely. But once I got into med school, and that was a long journey because I didn't do so good in school to get the grades to get into a legit U.S. med school. So, but that was a process. But once I was there, I liked the learning part of it. Some of the classes were hard for me to follow. Like some of the other students taking tests was very hard. And I think it kind of goes to that autism thing.
Mm.
I would understand it very well, but I just would not be able to understand the question, and I would get tripped up. And then once they would say the answer, I'd be like, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I knew that. I didn't know that in the moment, but I understand what
Yeah.
you're saying now. Yeah. So, but that's kind of, I think, back to the question, like what got me into it. I think it was just sort of influences from people I respected growing up. I thought that being a doctor would be, would be impressive to people. And I thought it would also serve me for what I wanted, and I would be happy with it. So that kind of pushed me into doing what it took to get into med school.
Interesting. Well,
Mm-hmm.
it does seem like definitely you are very in tuned with the alignment that you feel is purposeful and what is, meant for you as far as your path and what it was laid out for you as far as your cards. I always ask my guests to fill out this short form, and in that form, I ask about your daily routine. If there's any cannabis that's tied into your fitness, your wellness, things that you feed your personal development. And I think you had wrote something in that form as far as making sure that your intentions are aligned with what your purpose is and what you're doing here. And so I feel like you've kind of followed that and you're listening to it. From med school, what got you to actually just turn the leaf? I think you said 2017 went legal and you decided to jump on board. And I know it's not the easiest industry. I know a lot of people here, specifically in California. I don't know where about in California you are, but it's not an easy market. It's not an easy industry. So my hats and respects to many of you guys who are operating. Tell us a little bit about Cali Flwr Farms.
Mm-hmm. Well, so when California first started talking about it going legal, I was like, this is it. I'm passionate about weed and surfing. Those were the two. If you ask me what do I love, those were the two things at that time. And at the time, there was a surf company. Kelly Slater made this incredible surf wave. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it was a
Yes.
man-made. Yeah. I'm like,
Yes.
okay, I'm going to go work there. That's passion. Then I started talking to them. I'm like, oh, you're not going to be surfing that wave every day. You're not going to be hanging out with Slater. It's not going to be like that. It's, you got an email, you got a corporate job. It's going to be just like where you were, but instead of medical technology, it's going to be, waves. It'll be cool, but kind of the same groove. So then I'm like, okay, weed, it's going legal. Let me look into that. I'm born and raised Southern Cal. I've smoked my whole life, super passionate about it. I'm like, that also qualifies sort of as that surf or weed. I'm going to go the weed route. And I just jumped in and, got whatever products I can get and tried to sell them and get into the collectives and just learn the industry, meet the people. And I was fascinated, hooked. I would go to bed excited to wake up the next day for the adventure that lay ahead. And from that, it led to, meeting the different growers and understanding the industry and the genetics and the different strains that I didn't even know existed. I smoked my whole life and didn't really even know what sativa and indica was or the different genetics. So fascinated with that. Saw firsthand at the collective level at the early stage dispensaries that medicinal patients was a really big part of cannabis in Southern California, and that was inspiring for me coming from the medical background. But realized for this to grow legally and knowing the way the regulators look at like hospitals and medicine, knowing that that's where this is going to end up going towards, maybe not that extreme, but that level of accountability, I thought I would have a good role in getting in cannabis and helping a soulful industry retain their soul, knowing what lays ahead if you just go grabbing for the money. And, I don't think anybody that like yourself that has their heart and soul really wants that. So I thought I could be a good collaborator with everybody in SoCal legal cannabis. So I just kept doing it and kind of got to the farm level, met great grower, partnered with them, started building brands, learning all the ins and outs that you need to know. And we do have a lot of brands, but it's for us, it's more about how do you grow and seed to sale and trim and process and get weed into the legal dispensaries that's valuable for customers that the dispensaries like to sell because it sells. Customers come back because it's fresh and it's good quality. It's learning all of that and problem solving over and over and over. That's really what our brands are. Even though I got a brand or many brands, it's just that engine behind all the brands is what we really do every day. So.
Yeah, that's amazing, and thank you for sharing that, and it's completely true. It's, taking the time to get to know the other operators and cultivators in the space to really identify how you can help grow your brand as well and know, where your audience really lies as far as demographic, the city and community that you're gonna serve. Because I think it all comes into play on what genetics you're gonna put on shelf as well.
Mhm.
Um, so you said you've been operating since 2017. So with that in mind, I know recently we had a big buzz go through our community as far as reclassification for marijuana. What is your stance on that? What do you think is going to happen? I know it's going to take a while. Recently, I had Beard Bros on, and they talk about the dangle, and that's kind of where we're at, where some people thought it was going to be a big change right away. I don't think there's going to be big change right away, but I'm curious to know kind of how you felt about that when it did go through, and kind of like where do you think it sits as far as our future and the development of where this is going.
Yeah, I think it's an important step, but the reality of it, the day to day reality of it, is what I've learned over these last 6, 7, 8 years is the industry, the cannabis industry. Well, the cannabis industry pre legalization has been around for a long time. Building a company from scratch into the legal space, that's new. Getting a old school black market operator to transition into the legal space, all of that is hard and complicated. So we can barely figure out how to do this with all the regulations and the taxes, how to be profitable in the legal space. So I think there's a lot of issues and problems that need to be solved just locally, just within California. If the federal government said, okay, you could sell it anywhere in the country, I wouldn't even know how to do that. We could barely grow it in Southern Cal, transport it 80 miles from our grow, and be profitable with all the requirements and the taxes. So if you want me to take that same quality of weed and get it to New York and have it sell at a price that somebody in New York's going to pay for it, I don't know how that's going to, a lot has to be developed. So for me, the federal legalization, it's important, but there's still so many little issues that we have to figure out on how to operate. And at the end of the day, there was a black market that existed. It still does. It existed way before legalization. When people came in thinking, oh, we can tax that market, that illegal market, and make good money, that market slipped away. They're not involved in what we're doing. The people that are paying taxes, as the black market operators were able to find their evolution and continue doing what they do, you left behind a very small group of legal operators that are just crazily overtaxed. And so it's being able to figure out how to stimulate that small legal space to grow, or how do you stimulate the black market illegal operators to come into the space, share with the taxes, grow the industry. But until those nuts and bolts are starting to be ironed out, the federal legalization doesn't have a huge impact. The recent announcement, at the end of the day, all it means to me is, okay, great. Now I could file my taxes and say I'm doing cannabis and deduct my deductions like everybody else. But in terms of banking and all that, there's still a lot more that has to happen. And interstate commerce, it's too overly taxed to be able to do that competitively right now.
Yeah, it's a lot of things going on. I think when that happened, a lot of people were excited because of the 280E, which is
Mm-hmm.
another, part of it. But a lot of people are still out there reminding that the original idea for this as a plan is to completely deschedule it, and not reschedule it. I think for me, seeing ketamine, it was put it, I think, on the same schedule as ketamine. Can I don't know if you know off the top of your head, do you know what Schedule 3, all other Schedule 3 drugs
Uh,
would be on?
Yeah, I don't know all, but it's like Tylenol with codeine, Vicodin, the opium type drugs. So it's something that requires a medical doctor. In the Western medicine model, it still requires a Schedule 3, requires a medical doctor to say you can take this as a patient. You can't just walk into a store. You have to have, basically a prescription. So cannabis fell into that category. I don't think it's because doctors are going to prescribe cannabis, that they might eventually, but I think people will always be able to buy cannabis if they're over 21 or under 21 with a doctor's note. But it put it into that category, just again, like what you're saying, the Beard brothers were saying. I think it's just part of the momentum in the right direction. And then from that, maybe it can get rescheduled even lower. But at the scheduling that it's at now, at least cannabis businesses, prior to that, if you submitted your IRS tax forms and said you were cannabis, then if you earn $1 million, instead of paying taxes on $1 million, you do your deductions and you maybe pay taxes on 400,000. Cannabis guys, whatever you made, there's no deductions. You made $1 million, you're paying taxes on $1 million. So it was just brutal. The rescheduling has now put that, like, removed that, and we can submit our taxes just like any other business can. So that's at the end of the day, probably the significance of the rescheduling. But yeah, we're in a category that other drugs still require a doctor's approval for a patient to use it.
Yeah, it's sad. I think, there's my mom out there who gets all types of pharmaceuticals given to her and subscribe or prescribed to her, and she still looks at weed like the devil's lettuce. So
Yeah.
I think there's so much education that needs to be done, especially culturally. If I can see more education pamphlets, maybe in different languages, I think that would help as well. But that's very interesting. I think you have a very interesting perspective coming from a medical background and kind of seeing where it's at now, but also being part of the game from kind of the beginning of when the doors opened. So now that that's out of the way and that fun stuff is kind of set in tone, tell us a little bit about Cali Flwr Farms as far as genetics, kind of what we are looking for when we do go to local shops.
So Cali Flwr Farms is one of the brand names, but behind that brand, there's a greenhouse up in Santa Barbara area with some lights to help when it's too when there's too much coastal clouds. So there's a greenhouse grow behind Cali Flwr Farms, and then there's a distribution warehouse where we process all the weed. It's dried up at the farm, but then at the warehouse we trim it, weigh it, put it in different packages for the dispensaries. From a genetic standpoint, we try to stay to not not the land races, but to some of the more famous like Sour Diesel, Gorilla Glue, Blue Dream. We try to do just crosses that are between those well-known strains. For us, there's obviously the psychoactive component to it, the terpene profile, how it feels, smells, looks, all that. But we also have to look at, how does it yield as a grow in the different times of the year? Is there high mold? Is there how many ounces you can get from an individual plant? Because we have to watch the bottom dollar on everything to stay in this legal space. So a lot goes into what genetics we grow, and from that, when we find something that we like, then we work with the lab that cultures it. So we're just cleaning out the meristem of the plant, so we're dealing with a pure cut every single time. So we're known for super fresh, high quality weed. All of our brands, including Cali Flwr Farms, fresh, high quality weed at a price that a stoner would pay every day. Wait, can I hold on one second? This guy's asking to come in. Tank. Hold on. That's Tank. No.
Hello,
Tank. See, this is what I was saying. They might start.
All good. All good.
He's going to start asking for dinner. I know he is. Because we went to my sister's yesterday, and he went swimming in the pool all day.
Oh, nice.
And I'm like, dude, you're gonna die. You gotta take a break. And so today he's just slept all day long. So I know, and now this is like the first time he's surfaced for food. But so yeah, that's kind of the brands. We have a lot of brands, and we try different marketing strategies, but at the end of the day, we just keep falling back to just like In-N-Out. That the hamburger In-N-Out is such high quality at a good price. Yeah, that we're just trying to replicate that model. It's not the most bougie weed, but it's not like super old, dried outdoor weed. It's we harvest all year round, and so we're just trying to find that like In-N-Out model where we can get really good weed that the everyday stoner will pay and smoke, and it's about $15 to $20 an eighth. That's the price point that we're going for to customers. So,
wow,
yeah.
that is more than fair, I would
Yeah.
say.
It,
And
it,
those are all really good genetics. I mean, me personally, I am a huge fan of Gorilla Glue.
mhm.
Anything GMO, sour diesel is fire too. But
Yeah.
so greenhouse, is this all indoor? Any living soil? Are we doing rock wool all across?
No, it's all rock wool. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very nice. And you guys are up north in the coastal area. Santa Barbara, you said?
Yeah, south of Santa Barbara, Carpinteria. There was a lot of growers there doing a lot of flowers, a lot of fruits, and we were able to, partner with a grow up there that had taken over a portion of, I think it was like a tomato farmer, and kind of
Nice.
convert the grow to cannabis. But that was taking place, years before I even got involved. So that there's probably, 10 years of experience growing at that facility. Our master grower probably has another 20, 30 years of cannabis experience, which is critical to all of this. I know a lot of people think is you just get the cut and you grow it. When I go to the grow and I watch what
Mhm.
they do on the daily, it's amazing how many variables, how many things can go right, can go wrong, and how on top of it you need to be. So, I mean, huge shout out to our master grower.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I
Mm-hmm.
think it all
Mm-hmm.
comes down to the energy and the environment that these plants are being grown in, all the way to how they're being cured, how they're being shelved in the stores, to where they get into the consumer's hands. I think it goes all
Mm-hmm.
the way down to that. And so, I've had a couple NorCal farmers up here. Obviously, the ladies are a little bit more spiritual with the earth and the land. And so they
Mm-hmm.
talk about, the relationship they have with them. And I think some of these master growers really do their best to have, the same love for these plants, each and every single one they have their close eye on. So, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's important that your team is built out accurately to put out the quality that you want, depending on whatever brand your guys is built on. Very interesting. So, where can we find you as far as being on shelf? I know me personally down here, I'm in Inland Empire. I want to say on your Instagram, I saw you drive by Remedy Room, and I'm like, hey, that's my hood.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about maybe some of the local stores we can find your brands at. And I thought it was just Cali Flower, but if there's more, or I guess Cali Flwr Farms, does that mean you guys white label?
We haven't white labeled, but interesting. Remedy Room, we're working with them to possibly be doing a white label for them where they would be selling our weed under their brand. But no, all the branding is brands that we own or we started. And there's a few of them. Cali Flwr Farms is probably the bigger one
Okay.
because we have a Maui Wowie strain and a Cali Gas
Mm,
OG, which is I don't know the exact genetics, but it's glue mixed with I think SFEOG, maybe G13, some other OG cuts, and so we're no Cali Flwr Farms. That brand has really grown just because of those two strains, the Cali Gas OG and the Maui Wowie. Those are well known.
nice.
Remedy Room, yeah, we've been selling them for a while. The we're the Inland Empire. Okay, I would see people come into cannabis, legal cannabis. Everybody goes to West Hollywood, Beverly Hills. All I'm like, the stoners are Inland Empire. We sell 3 times the amount of weed to the Inland Empire. Huge shout out to the IE. I did not know that, but that is where most of the weed is being sold for us is out there. So again, the in and out model, it's like this is weed you could smoke every single day and not have to pay 50, $60 an eighth. But yeah, Remedy Room is a big one. The Inland Empire, there's Empire
Yep.
Gardens.
Mhm.
Yep, we saw a lot of weed. There's one in Paris at Lake Elsinore. Um, but I would say God, we're in probably 60, 70 dispensaries, and there's a guy I work with, Antoine. He knows the city, every city of Southern California, every freeway. I need Google Maps. I have no clue where we're going, and we'll pull up somewhere, and I'm like, "Oh, is this Inland Empire?" And he's like, "No, dude, we're in Palm Springs." I don't even
Yeah.
know where half these dispensaries are, but I lose sight of them. But those are the big ones I think that we sell in Inland Empire, like West Side Collective, or they're Lake Elsinore. That's not really Inland Empire, but yeah, Empire Gardens has a few, and Remedy Room, and then let's see, Blaze Utopia, is that Inland Empire? Does that ring a bell? Yeah,
Yeah, there's a few
yeah,
that are the legal ones that you can still see. The rest of
yeah.
them are still trapped in
Still trapping. Yep, yep. And
still
that's how
trapped.
it is. That's everywhere. We see every now you're seeing the smoke shops. They're everywhere. And it used to be little, trap houses here and there, but now I could find in between each legal dispensary I drive to 5 or 10 almost
Oh,
every
yeah.
single place. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
which is scary because recently we had a lot of there was a lot of talk and a lot of buzz go on in regards to specific brands that found mold in them. And then now there's the whole testing deal that a lot of people are talking about because some dispensary owners want to do their own testing.
mhm.
Any thoughts to that? Being a
Well,
brand owner, I know, obviously I've talked to labs before. There's markers that they create their own, but then obviously DCC gives them the list that they're supposed to go by. So I feel like there's like a weird line here for you guys as far as brand owners, as you know what I mean?
mhm. I heard recently about the DCC. Well, a few months ago, I was walking into dispensaries, and the dispensaries were like, "Hey, the DCC just came in here and asked for some random brands to do testing."
Hmm.
So I'd asked what the brands were, to see if it was any of ours. But and so I heard who they were, and then recently the LA Times came out with that article and said these brands were using dirty distillate, and so, I think what that shows is at the end of the day, you could make way more money with your product in the illegal space. So you're using your cheapest leftovers for the legal space. That it just comes down to economics. If you could make money in the legal space, people will do business there. But if there's so much more money in the illicit market, then that's where all the product's going to end up, and that's not hard to do. I mean, people know how to do that, so that'll just keep going. So I think what we're seeing is, it's multifactorial, but you're going to have shitty products entering the legal space if there's no money to be made there. So the dirty distillate thing, and that at the end of the day has been going on forever. I don't vape. I like weed. I like to just traditionally smoke, so it doesn't like personally impact me. Plus, when I would vape, it made me cough a lot, so I'm just not totally sure like how like if vaping is the right way. Weed has the stigma of smoke, which goes back to a whole generation of tobacco and the cancer in the lungs and the tar and all of that. So that's a huge issue that has to be, like you had talked earlier about, re-educating, because at the end of the day, you're breathing. Your lungs are a direct line to arterial blood. That's a very powerful way to administer medicine to the patient. And if you go into an emergency room and there's an emergency situation, they're going to say, get an arterial line, like get me access to that patient's systemic blood flow. Like that way you can get medicine immediately into their body. So the lungs are that. I mean, so it is a very powerful way. You have instant onset, and if you smoke effectively, you can minimize a significant amount of risk. If you reduce the temperature of the smoke, you're going to eliminate a lot of trauma to the airways. And if you smoke, without propane or butane, or you're removing a lot of chemicals. If you're smoking just, the THC or just the flower, and not with rolling papers, there's a lot you can do to minimize it, but that's going to take, like what you're saying, a lot of education. Uh, yeah, before people embrace the consumption of weed through smoke. But I do it. I see it works beautifully. That is a campaign I'm going to stay on for I'm going to support for a long time. Yeah, I think I know doctors. I know what
I
they're
love
going to say. Yeah, they're going to be like, fuck no. There's no way I can prescribe a joint to a patient. But at the end of the day, it's like, dude, you got an arterial line. Just they're breathing. People are breathing air. People are smoking all day long. Every time you walk by a car, you're smoking everything that's coming out of that car. So we are smoking constantly. To just
Yeah.
throw a little bit of plant herb into that mix could be a good thing.
I
So
hear it expands the lungs. It's good
yeah.
for capillaries. I
Yeah,
see that in some movie.
yeah,
I'm sure it was a stoner movie, so don't quote
yeah.
me there.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I mean, there's all types of studies now, especially because athletes are talking about how much they prefer this medicine, alternative medicine for them over opioids or whatever other medicines they're trying to put them on that is in, I guess a pill form.
Hmm.
So for me, I think there is a lot of education, like you said, and even the research that they're doing now around how the synergies are. I just had a chemist on. I was just telling you that offline, and she was just talking about the lack of research that's out there from even knowing what happens to THC when it is, lit up with a joint, what the paper does to it, or the girl blunts when people are doing like rose blunts, and what roses happen to do when they're turned up to a certain temperature, because they don't do studies like that. So I think she had mentioned that many of the studies in today's world that many people are looking at are done by people that have either agenda that needed to be pushed, and they weren't stoners, so they were like making their own markers as far as what to look for. So I feel like we are kind of doing a reversal as far as like, yes, this is where we are now. Yes, we are, adult use, recreational, medicinal, but there's so much more that I think a lot of us who are passionate about really getting this over the line the right way is here, and we're really, diving into it. So education is going to be needed more and more. I think a lot of people are enjoying sometimes the negative things that come out of cannabis space. So I'm hoping that we learn from all of these different things, because, less eyes on us being shitty operators and business owners will be better for us in the long run.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And what you said, like with the research, that even exists in other industries. If there's an agenda, that's what the research is going to show. So we need research, but at the same time, we got to know who's performing this research. And probably the best information is still going to come from people like you and me that are grassroots, that are sharing personal stories. Because like if a doctor were to sit down and say, okay, tell me how to prescribe this, it would be, if he was even willing or she was willing to do it. It's hard because, what I do think I see, sativas cause coughing. I know when I go to the grow and I get around sativas, I personally start coughing, and I can have skin irritation to sativas. So there is, some people are like, there's no difference. To me, there is. I can definitely, just before it even enters my body, I have a different experience. So, a personal story, it'd be like, okay, sativas might be too hypertussive. They cause you to cough too much. But then you get into the profiles, and nobody really knows the true terpene profile. You just got to smoke it and see, because I could smoke an OG and it has an impact on me that could have a completely different impact on you. And I've seen it where people could even get, extreme paranoia, and it's like, I'm totally relaxed and they think they're dead. Yeah. So they're for where I'm going with this is, from a research education standpoint, it almost needs to still really be that grassroots, be with somebody that loves cannabis, knows cannabis, and then can walk you down a journey to find out what works for you. And, starting with micro dosing, walking into it slowly, and then figuring out what the modality is of consumption. Like I said, I prefer smoking, but, for a doctor to prescribe or support cannabis the way they think, it's like, no, they need to be able to write really black and white instructions, hand it to them. And, if somebody said to me, okay, smoke this OG 3 times a day, every single, it's like, dude, I could barely smoke that half a time a day.
Right.
So I would just be so over medicated out of the gate. And then similarly, you might be under medicated. And the same even goes for pharmaceutical drugs. But certainly with cannabis, I think you have to find a personal motivation to be a patient or a consumer, and then surround yourself with a rich culture of people that can help you find that pathway to where you can now use plant-based medicine, very individual, for whatever disorder or ailments, or even just for a recreational experience. So it's the research has to happen, but for me, I'm like that, until you're Marlboro and you got the money and your agenda is to show the benefits of cannabis, I don't know I could believe any of the research until that person's doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, completely, 100%. I think you touched on so many important factors as far as, right dosing. You talked about low temp. That actually got me curious. I wrote a note here to remind myself to ask you, are you only carrying flower, or do you guys also sell like pre-rolls and rosin or any sort of concentrates?
So we do flour,
Mhm.
and then we take like wet to dry to bucked, and then we trim it, hand trim. So we sell just the bud, the flower, and then we also sell the shake that has any THC on it. and we even
Okay.
separate some smalls. So all the flower pretty much goes. Then we use all the leftover. We put it together and then do an ice water extraction for hash.
Okay.
And we do that either as just like raw powder, or we sometimes roll it into, depending on the consistency of it, we'll roll it into temple balls. And
Oh,
then, yeah, and then all of that is sold. Then we buy distillate from somebody else,
okay.
uh, and we make gummies, and that's all the kind of the branding we do. Oh, and then we do pre rolls. We do just really basic cone pre rolls
Mhm.
using hemp paper. When you talk to the dispensaries, everything's just cheap, cheap, cheap. Give us pre rolls at $1. That's all we need. So we do a lot of cones, which is like a traditional knock box, and then we also do. I saw a crew right before it went legal. These guys were making some of the coolest pre rolls, and I reached out to them and said, "Hey, I'm gonna kind of knock off what you guys are doing, or knock off what you guys are doing. If it takes off, I'll give you a piece of the company, because you showed me what it was. But if it doesn't and it falls apart, then nobody will associate it with you. So don't worry." So we do a really cool glass tip pre roll as well, and so that's pretty much all of our products. In terms of like rosin, our crew, they're all mad scientists. They'll go into the manufacturing, they'll press the hash, and they make all different kinds of rosins and extracts for themselves to consume. But we don't sell that yet. We don't have the capacity to do that.
Gotcha.
So
Gotcha.
yeah,
Love me the pre-rolls, especially the
yeah,
ones that have the glass tips.
yeah, yeah,
Third year for Emerald Cup. So yeah, get those pre-rolls in. We love to see what's out there in today's market.
yeah, yeah. I love.
Um,
I've smoked pre rolls up until about 2 months ago, and I just kind of changed how I smoke. So I love pre-roll glass tip, about 2.5 grams, a big old cannon. People are always like, "Damn!" I'm like, I love handing it out because they've never seen anything like it. And yeah, it's a beautiful pre-roll, and we roll it. My daughter is the best pre-roller, but she won't do it professionally. But I'm like, please, you could literally be successful. I mean, she feels the density. It's a perfect smoke.
you're like,
So
put it on your resume, boo.
yeah, it's powerful what she knows, and because people don't realize doing a pre-roll, it's the genetics, but it's how you cut it, and you got to look at how dry is the weed, how
Yeah.
oily is the weed. There's a lot that goes in to have a very consistent pre-roll every
Yep.
single time. So yeah, but no, a few months ago I was like, I've been smoking, my lungs are starting to feel it, so I got to be very cautious with how I consume, and the pre-rolls were hitting a little too hard. So I switched to I do a little bubbler, which is new to me. I
Oh,
was a bong. All you said 10
I
cans.
love bubble.
Yeah, you love bongs or bubblers?
Both. Yeah. No,
Yeah,
but I
yeah,
like bubblers because you could take them with you.
yeah. They're small, but what? So for me, I was once I found a bong, I'm like, okay, this is it. I love
Yeah.
smoking. I love the water filtration, ice, everything, snow if you're up in the mountains.
Yep.
I mean, vodka when we were 18, just everything screwing around. But we like now I do a little bubbler, and I grind the weed. I have a glass rod that I heat up with a propane torch that has it's a glass rod with a
Oh,
ceramic
yes.
tip, and I use
Yes, that's
that
what
to
you
yeah,
mhm.
yeah, like
I
dabbing,
need
and
one
then
of those.
yeah,
I haven't had
and
one of those in so long. The one with, like, a little glass, it's like a ball, basically what
exactly.
yes.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
Little
it's hard to
wand.
find those.
Yeah, they are. So the local head shop where I live, the little smoke shop, they have them. And when I go in there sometimes and ask for them, most of the people don't even that work there don't even know that they have them. I have to say, oh, it's that little
Yeah, they
drawer,
don't know
right?
what they
Yeah.
are.
They're like,
Yeah.
I've never. What is this thing? Yeah. So I heat up that ceramic tip. I use that heat, and then I even have a little carbon filter on the mouthpiece. So I'm doing everything between, you know, the heat source. I'm
Nice.
like doing a poor man's vape, water
Yep.
bubbling to cool it down, and then I got my little carbon filter to help remove, and I noticed a huge difference. So I know, like we were saying earlier, there are ways to consume weed through the lungs without it being that stigma of smoking. Yeah. So
Yeah, I know. A lot of the athletes don't like it, um, because of the smoke, like you said,
mhm.
what, the unhealthy stigma around smoke in your lungs. But I've been smoking. I prefer to smoke out of a bong. And so I'll smoke before I go to the gym. I don't feel like it affects me personally. I do kickboxing classes. I don't think it affects me, but like you said, everybody's ECS is different. Endocannabinoid system is different. I know that from my own fitness background. So it's very interesting, I think, how people consume now because there's so many innovative products out there, and devices that you can consume your flower or rosin, or, like you said, now there's beverages and there's gummies and there's tinctures and
Mhm.
topicals. And so it's exciting, I think, to see everything coming from, the Coke can days for me and, just shitty ass weed to where it is now. I think there's still a
Mhm.
lot of work to be done at an educational level. But again, there's people like you and I who are eager and passionate about what we do. And so here we are.
Yeah.
Well,
I would say to any athlete, anybody that's concerned about it, just use water. The hot temperature is probably the number one culprit in damaging your lungs. It's not the actual smoke; it's the heat from the smoke. And and when you light a lighter, that's 200-300 degrees. That
oh, so
smoke
even
is,
using a lighter, which is
yeah.
why
If you're,
cool.
yeah, if you could reduce the temperature, so if you could combust the weed with
Right.
hot temperature, but then put it through water, so now the temperature is dropped. And if you can put it through a second round of water, if you can get that water, that the
Double
temperature of the
chamber.
smoke down, you're going to eliminate a huge amount of the side effects for, like, because I'm like you, I could smoke and go do anything. I
Yeah, me too.
almost don't do any activity without smoking, like surfing, yoga, whatever it is. For me, one, I don't feel it in my energy or my lungs, but
Yeah.
way more importantly is I feel it in my mind, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, this is such a better experience. I am feeling in like individual muscle fibers in my toe. It's a really good experience. So I don't have a
Love
problem.
that.
I've been very cautious with the temperature part, keeping that down low. Yeah,
Good to know. I've always
yeah.
done bongs for a really long time, so I'm
Mhm.
glad I've stuck to that. And lately, my favorite bong has a double chamber, so it gets the water at the bottom of the
Yeah,
beak and then the second chamber there. So
there you
I'll
go.
keep in mind the ice for more
Yeah,
coldness.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
Love
gotta
it.
get one of those tools for sure.
Hmm.
All right.
I
Well,
think
I
it's
think
yeah. I think it's called a Grevo stick. That's what they called it. Grevo. I don't know.
Grevo.
Yeah, but now that I know you want them, I'll get you some, and we'll send you some Grevo sticks. Yeah,
Yeah, that'd be great. Awesome. All right. Well, I appreciate you sharing everything, sharing your time, sharing a little bit about your brand story, a little bit about who you are, and kind of like your intentions behind the brand out there. So, before I let you go, we have a rapid fire where I kind of ask what you enjoy smoking with and how you enjoy smoking. So, we will jump into that.
hmm
Before we do that, if you don't mind just going ahead and let everybody know where we can find you and support you, whether that's you personally or the brands.
yeah. I think the best way to engage with us is we're doing it through, we have X, Twitter, YouTube, everything, but Instagram, Cali underscore Dope Crew. I think that's sort of the gateway to who we are. I'm sitting here talking with you, but there's 20, 30, 40 of us that are all a part of this journey, and we got a great culture, great team. That's a great little portal, Cali underscore Dope Crew. On Instagram, that's a great portal, great way to get in touch with any of us, all the brands, everybody, everything that we're doing.
Awesome. I'll make sure that all of his information is in our
Mm-hmm.
description and you guys will be able to support and connect with them there as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Teddy, here we go. Rapid fire, 7
Uh-huh.
grams, cheap entertainment. We have grinders or fingers.
Uh, I was gonna say I'm not good rapid fire because I overthink everything. You're gonna see the autism come out right now. I love them both because if you do it with your fingers, you're feeling how sticky, how moist. So I love
Yeah.
doing it with the fingers, but I also feel like, shit, there's so much stuck on my fingers and I want it in the weeds. So I like grinders too. Yeah, but even with the grinder, it's like shit. It's I got a lot of weed from the previous grind. So
Yeah.
everything's got pros and cons. So I'm gonna have to go with both
That's
grinders and fingers.
That's true. Today, one of my girlfriends just gave me a cut and I grinded it up. And when I try to smell it, I'm like, now I'm mixing it with all the other,
So yeah,
millions of times that I've done this to other
yeah.
herb. All right, cool. Dispensary or local plug?
Well, okay. Now look, I got people watching me. I got DCC, IRS. I got
You won't
I'm
believe how many people say the same thing. It's the great pause of my
yeah.
7 p.m.s.
I'm like, wow, that's like they're gonna anything I say can. Am I being detained? Am I free to go? Yeah, no, I would say, look, find out who's got the best weed and go get the best weed because it's a plant at the end of the day. If the legal space can make it work at a
There you
price
go.
point with the quality, yeah, go buy it there. But otherwise, the number one priority would be find the best plug, whether it's legal or not legal, and get good weed at the right price. That's what matters now. Get with a good group of people and figure that out. I'm one of them. Cali_dope crew. I'll hook up anybody.
That's fair. I always tell
Mm-hmm.
the moms too, or the women, don't try to, don't be afraid to try to grow your own.
Yeah.
Couple in the patio won't hurt.
Yep, yep.
Um,
You can grow your own. I see what we do on the grow side. I'm like, there's so much love and care and attention that goes into these plants that it's like I could never replicate that at home. I mean, we walk
oh yeah, no.
yeah. It's incredible. But anyway, okay, keep going, keep
Yeah,
rapid
unless
fire.
you're like farmers or you're growing your own like, veggie produce garden, you probably got a hand, but yeah, definitely
Yeah,
not exactly the same.
yeah.
Floral, fruity, or gasoline terps.
Gas, gas.
Yes,
Love
everybody
gas.
goes,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Bong rips or joints. I think we know that.
Well, okay, again, man, it's hard to say. The autism kid can't answer that black and white. I started with bongs. The journey began with bongs. I went through a pre-roll joint phase, and now I'm back to sort of the hybrid of both of those, maybe the bubbler. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I started at water. I'm
I'll
back to
learn.
water. Yeah,
Yeah, water always helps.
yeah.
Papers or leaves.
Paper. I never did anything but paper. That's all I
Oh, no
know. Yeah.
blunts. So you
Mm-mm.
won't smoke a blunt. Okay.
Yeah, well, I never have. In Europe, I did. I think we did. No, we would roll tobacco with hash. That
Oh,
was kind of my blunt. But yeah, no, I don't have a lot of experience with anything but just weed and paper. Yeah,
so that's a spliff, right? The
yeah, yeah,
tobacco.
yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. Yeah,
Yes. I hear there's benefits to that.
yeah. I liked it. I was younger, but I liked it. But it still wasn't the same high as weed, as cannabis. Yeah.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
All right, live resin or rosin?
I've never done either. Yeah,
Oh, really? You're not a
yeah.
dabber at all? No concentrates? No, thank you.
No, I just, I was always smoking and I was a closet smoker. So I
Mm.
wasn't totally aware of what everybody else was doing. I was hiding it. And then kind of when I came out, this, recent coming out of the weed closet, and I saw how everybody was consuming and I saw that torch light up. I'm like, these fuckers are on heroin. It was a hard adjustment for me. I was like, oh shit, hell no. So I'm like, I'm old. I'm just going to stick with what I know. But now I do have a torch that I use to light my stick. So maybe one day I'll be able to get past all of that. But yeah, no, I never dabbed. And I also just thought, oh, it might be, even though I've been smoking for so long, I'm a lightweight. I still don't need a ton to get
Yeah,
high. And I just thought that dab might be too much for me, but who knows? I
yeah,
might be there one day. Yeah,
yeah.
I love terps,
Um,
so yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I do it every now and again. I won't lie. I'll probably have always like at least a 1 grammer in the fridge just to have.
Mhm, mhm.
But I'll play with it where it's just
Yeah,
do like a little drop on my bowl. I'm definitely a flower person, so that's probably why I don't dab too much. But still, I was the same way when I first started seeing it. The torch always tripped me out. I'm like,
yeah, yeah,
typical crackhead move. I don't think I need that, but I do
yeah,
like electric rigs, Puffco,
yeah.
Focus. I have some of those. Those are really convenient.
Mhm.
And the smokeless part of it, especially for moms, like it's
Mhm.
kind of helpful for that
Yeah,
part.
yeah, for sure. Yeah,
And it lasts longer. Smaller ribs last longer, just a little
yeah,
bit more costly,
yeah,
as obviously.
yeah.
All right, last one. Cheech and Chong or Pineapple Express?
Oh God, it was that's Cheech and Chong as a kid was mind blowing, but Pineapple Express is so like if I watch Cheech and Chong now, I cringe at how cheesy it is. Whereas Pineapple Express is still hilarious.
Right.
So I know you wanted answers, and I said both to everything except maybe the one question I shouldn't. You should go buy from a trap house. That was the one question I was pretty clear on. All the other ones I was kind of 50-50. But I would say Cheech and Chong because of the impact it had as a young kid of watching guys just own it and making fun of it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So
A lot of people say they just, built out the culture and they're still part of it now. And so that's amazing
yeah,
to see
yeah,
them part of the journey. But definitely love me some Pineapple Express. There's just so many
yeah,
parts on there I could
yeah,
replay.
yeah,
But
yeah.
thank you so much for sharing, everything that you shared today and just coming on to share some time. All right, guys, that's it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you guys subscribe, like, and make sure you guys share the show to help us grow. We're out.